This is the Sisters in Therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Mercedes, licensed marriage and family therapy supervisor.
I am Dr. Brittany Harrell, licensed professional counselor.
I am Dr. TK, licensed marriage and family therapy supervisor.
We are inviting you to be a part of our thoughtful, mind-shifting, mental health-related conversations that we have all the time amongst ourselves.
This podcast is not meant to replace your relationship with a licensed therapist. Now, let's get into the session.
What's up? Welcome to the Sisters in Therapy podcast. Today, we are talking about emotional intelligence, the key to personal and professional success. So, emotional intelligence refers to the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and use emotions effectively in oneself and others. The "and others" threw me off. Help me.
Really? Okay. So a big part of emotional intelligence, people think that it's just about knowing our own emotions and how they come out.
Okay.
But really, a large part of just overall emotional intelligence is being able to pick up and notice when other people are experiencing an emotion.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, yes.
Just because how can we effectively navigate a conversation or an argument if we are not aware of the current emotional state of the person that we are talking to?
Right. And I understand that for us as therapists, but the regular person is supposed to be able to know how to...
At least a little bit, because
I
that's a
think
part of
that's
emotional
lacking.
intelligence. Because if you're trying to reason with someone and you know that this person already has trauma in this area or they're coming off of a heated argument at work, it is not emotionally intelligent to try to challenge them in the moment. You see,
Trauma-informed
if you're
care.
paying attention, you see that they're distressed or their voice is elevated or maybe they're just
Okay.
Why am I
walking
thinking of
around.
police officers right now?
not being emotionally intelligent.
Or no, but this is something that they need.
Oh yes,
Because
absolutely.
I'm thinking of police officers like immediately. Teachers, police officers, parents,
Judges.
judges, but most definitely police officers.
Absolutely agreed.
Okay.
But they're only aware of their own emotions and their
Okay.
immediate fear. They
Gotcha.
don't have the ability to pick up on or notice or
Okay.
engage with somebody in an emotionally intelligent way, because that would be considering both parties' emotional states.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So this brings me to you guys. How do you feel like what was your first, I guess, introduction to emotional intelligence, and how do you feel like yours has progressed?
I would say it's definitely progressed. And it's progressed for me in a way of becoming more comfortable with communicating with people. Because I know that I can have a tendency to shut down. I think where it's worked on the back end for me is because I used to have a staring problem as a kid. Right? I would
Really?
stare at people. My mom would be like, girl, if you don't turn your butt around, stop staring at these people. And I think that led to me being sort of intuitive to other people and not intuitive to myself, right? So like I wouldn't necessarily say that's emotionally intelligent, but I think that was what used to help me as far as this person needs something or this person is isolating. I've been able to pay attention to others very well. And I think as I've gotten older, I've learned to balance prioritizing, pay attention to myself while also paying attention to others. So like to your example earlier, like if I notice that things are getting a bit tense, I will be the one to say, you know what, actually, as a matter of fact, let's pull back because clearly this is not about to be productive. And I don't think this is going to serve either of us. I think that is where I've learned more about the emotional intelligence for myself and how to practice it practically. I said the same word twice, but
What was it? Did you ask the first question? How do
No.
you... Okay.
No,
I
but you
think
can
she
answer
said like our
the-
first experience. I
First
think.
experience with emotional intelligence. If I was thinking, so when I think about emotional intelligence, I'm thinking about like just my own emotions, the first part of it, and so probably like just anxiousness, because that's anxiousness is an emotion and you feel it, and it's probably for me it'll be definitely like in elementary and just trying to perform well on science tests or even being in the spelling bee and just thinking even back then like I was nervous to spell the words, but I'm like, you know how to spell the word. So and then just walking myself through it and regulating my emotions. That's kind of where I came to when I'm thinking about my emotional intelligence. Because definitely I was a nerd and doing spelling bees and stuff, and I would be nervous to spell the word, even though you know how to spell the word.
But you know what? To that example, that's an anxiety inducing experience. It's like 50 people sitting in front of you. So I think that's normal.
But I'm saying like, but I couldn't like regulating my emotions is what helped me to win the spelling bee, and not just like the fear of like spelling the word but I would have got kicked out the spelling bee, but I ended up spelling the word anyway.
Yeah.
But that was pretty fun too back in the day. But that's when I think about like regulating my own emotions.
Yeah. T?
I feel like mine is almost similar to yours, Brittany, in that my emotional intelligence really started with the observing other people's emotions. And so I had to really learn how to observe my own or even notice that I get to have any. I think I was so intensely aware of other people's emotions growing up that I could see almost, I feel like I could see and feel everything in everybody. And it was almost like I don't have room to exist here, or I don't get to have feelings here because there's already so much going on. I'm paying attention to so much. Like, it almost didn't occur to me that I could or would have any for myself until not knowing that this is important. Like, I have emotions too, because then I'd start crying here or being upset there. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't get to have these, but they're happening. And so it wasn't until then that I was like, okay, you might have to do something about this too. You get to have feelings too.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I've always had big feelings.
Me too.
I was called
aware.
the sensitive one in every group, every friendship group, family group. I've always had big feelings, so I've always was sensitive. It's what they called it.
I feel like I was sensitive to others more than my own. It's
Well,
not that I didn't have them, because I was sensitive.
I mean, sensitive to the fact that like, oh, people are being assholes. Like, you're being an asshole.
You were
Oh
aware.
no! See, mom was like, "What's going on with them? They must be upset. Something must have happened."
Yeah.
No, mine
To
was like,
them, I
y'all are
wonder-
mean.
That was not mine.
Y'all are mean.
Okay, so the first question was like, we talked about how ours kind of evolved over time, but do you have a personal definition of emotional intelligence that you want to share?
I didn't talk about how mine evolved over time, but I would say like it's just like managing my own emotions, but also understanding the people around me and their emotions. I think that's something I've always done well, but I've always been aware of my emotions and been aware of other people's emotions. But I don't think that I've ever like intentionally provoked somebody or added like fire to something that was already like on fire, because that is kind of like, that's when you don't really like, you're not being emotionally sensitive to other people when you know they're already going through something and you go over there and you just make it worse. That's not something I've done. But I have seen that done around me. You know how you have the hot head or somebody just keep, like, thinking about a Thanksgiving dinner in a chaotic family.
Oh, like trying to antagonize something?
Yeah, I'm like, that's something I have seen all around me growing up. I'm like, I've never been that person just, like, antagonizing somebody and keep doing it. Like, bro, you got low emotional IQ to do people like that.
Do you feel like it's different whenever it's not antagonizing? But we were talking about this in the last session of someone like trying to fix something, even though the other person is clearly emotionally saying.
That's also a sign of like low emotional intelligence, not being able to read the room.
Yeah. To where somebody is clearly saying like, hey, I'm not in a place to where like I can have this conversation or engage, but we still, not to antagonize, but because of our own anxiety and our own emotions or our own codependence or maybe past trauma or just non-secure attachments are coming up, and we're not able to really emotionally manage how we feel in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
I think they're the same.
Okay.
I do. One, because the other one appears like more of a safety, but it's still like you're not being emotionally intelligent enough to understand this person does not need this from you. So you're not really picking up on their emotions and what they're going through at the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important that we say that both of these are not emotionally intelligent, because just because one might seem or appear less harmful does not mean that it's actually not harmful, because it is to you and to the situation. Now, you get to feel distress, but it's also your responsibility to manage that distress, not to continue to make another person distressed in attempts to ease your own.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of is counterproductive for sure. I would say my definition is just the ability or the awareness in recognizing what's going on, primarily with self, right? So like what you were saying, I'm anxious or I'm angry. And I think emotional intelligence allows for all emotions to exist. I think the intelligence part is what you do with it. Really. I'm angry. Just because you're angry does not mean that you have a right to be physically harming somebody else or be abrasive, whatever the case is. So it's the ability to communicate or just to know what to do with the emotions when they come up. Because I think a lot of people, we did a session on emotional awareness, I believe. And something like that. And the message for that is like allow for all emotions to exist. It really is a matter of what you do with it.
Yes.
Really.
So what you're speaking on is basically like self-awareness and then the self-regulation.
Yes.
So like the knowledge of your
part.
She said it's a huge part.
yeah, like the acknowledgement of the emotion, then the regulation is how I'm going to regulate the emotion and actions in a variety of environments too. Is what because there are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence and those 2 are two of the top 2 of them. I'm stuttering.
Yeah. It's okay.
Self-awareness and self-regulation are 2 out of 4 pillars of emotional intelligence.
Yes, exactly. And I would say that's kind of one of the first approaches that I use with clients is becoming more self-aware. That way they begin to develop the practice of emotional intelligence.
People are self-aware though. I think it's more so like they self-aware and then they don't know what to do with the awareness because you people feel what they feel. I'm like, you feel it, you know, this is the knowledge of your own thoughts and your feelings and your thoughts, but what are you gonna do with it? I think people don't know what to do with it, especially when it comes to like maybe an action that needs to be taken that may mean you have to confront somebody and have like a hard conversation. And so I think people get stuck in the awareness is what I think.
I agree. I definitely think that's part of it. So as we're talking about clients, I'm curious for y'all, what comes up in the therapy room, or how do you notice how emotional intelligence or lack of emotional intelligence impacts the lives of your clients?
I think it goes to what Mercedes was saying earlier. Like, people are aware, but they just don't know what to do with it, right? Especially when they have to have hard conversations, really. On top of that, I've had a lot of clients consistently invalidate themselves.
Yes.
And that is the opposite of emotional awareness. And if they are avoidant, their default is to invalidate. If I invalidate, that means I don't want to do nothing with it. So I could have been tripping. That's okay. They had a point. I'll leave it alone. So that perpetuates this avoidance approach. So I've seen that come up a lot. My clients invalidating themselves, which sort of counteracts with the process that I'm trying to help them work through. Like, no, you have every right. I don't think you had a right to go off on this person, but you had a right to feel what you feel. So it's a matter of what you do with it. Again, I keep saying the same thing, but that's essentially how it comes up for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar. I mean, I think that we're gonna have similar stories here. But when a client comes to therapy and they present with the issues that's bringing them into therapy, I'm like, you know, I point out the fact that, oh, okay, that's some great self-awareness, and then I point out the fact that what I'm not seeing is self-regulation.
Right.
So that ends up being like what guides the treatment and trying to help people figure out, okay, what do I do to regulate these emotions so that I can stop calling my baby daddy and screaming and cursing him out, and or getting mad at my daughter or my son because they left the toilet seat up or left the refrigerator open or something like that. And like, these are things like, you deserve to feel how you feel about these things. These emotions are valid, but the behavior has to come from a calm mind.
I agree, and I think the other part of that is not just the self-awareness or the regulation of emotions, but it's also the being aware of other people's emotional states and their capacity. And I think that's a large part of emotional intelligence that my clients have a hard time tapping into, and it's really being able to put yourself in another person's shoes to be able to say, this kid is doing what kids do. This person is being this way. This is the only way that they have ever been or that they have ever responded. We keep wanting something different, or we keep not understanding where they come from, or you're like, well, I don't know why they wouldn't just do it the way I want them to do it or say it the way I wanted to say it. You're coming from your one emotional stance and lived experience. You are not allowing yourself to step into their shoes and see the full span of who this other person is and how they might be responding differently to this situation. Therefore, you're not going to be able to regulate or have empathy or compassion for where they're coming from.
Right.
Okay.
You're only thinking about your own emotional state.
Exactly. And that would lead that, and empathy is a third pillar of emotional intelligence, which is what you're talking about, which is basically saying having an open and growth mindset and appreciate somebody else's perspective. Even if you disagree, I get it.
I get it too, and it's valid. I see it come up a lot, like just maybe the lack of emotional intelligence come up a lot in parent-child relationships.
100%.
A lot of my adult patients have a hard time seeing their parents' perspectives And some of it, most of it, 100% valid. But again, I think we've talked about this before. When you can fully see your parents as human, or maybe they're helping you out financially, but also they have other financial responsibilities. And also the same way prices are going up for you, they're going up for them. So maybe they are asking you a little bit more about maybe you taking more of the responsibility on, or them not being able to help you as much. You don't understand that. You just say, how dare they? Because they've been helping me this whole time.
Yeah.
And you refuse to see them as
People.
full, complete humans,
Right.
which is not fair to them.
Right.
Not at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a
Emotional
good point.
intelligence.
What about for you, Mercedes, whenever it comes to like partners, or when it comes to like conflict resolution, how does emotional intelligence or lack thereof show up
For couples?
Yeah, or is it different?
It's the same because I mean the only thing with couples is just two humans, but they just live together and they have to talk about these things. But I just kind of task people with the practice of emotional intelligence by giving people something I started doing recently. Is called accountability and vulnerability task. It's been so helpful.
Ooh, tell us about it.
That's something I've been using to treat infidelity because unfortunately, like you need emotional intelligence to heal from infidelity in a marriage. And so accountability and a vulnerability task is somebody gets like 2 to 3 minutes to say what I did to contribute to like things going in this direction in our marriage. And then the vulnerability is the part where they're kind of having remorse and they're saying like, you know, I want this to change. I want it to be different. And then the last 1 minute, then they hug and just reassure that love is still here.
I like that.
It's a very good task.
Did you come up with this?
I researched it and found that. But
Okay,
I
'cause this is
added that.
beautiful.
No, it already existed, but I just kind of put my own twist on it. I had to because these couples are stretching me. And
This is beautiful.
I had to, but it mostly came. But you know, like I told you, I had to start doing my own research and more. You know, we got to stay up to date with research on stuff.
Yeah.
But it is hard to come into this space and try to treat infidelity, and you know they're saying I want to stay, but I'm just so hurt right now, like I'm so hurt.
absolutely.
And I'm like, well, the goal is that you want to stay. Now my job is to help you work through this pain, and that's how I came up with that task. And one of my clients asked me, like, she's like, Dr. Moore, like I hear you about like the accountability and the vulnerability, but how do I do this task and like not be pissed off? I'm like, you might be pissed off. I'm not trying to, you know, rob you from being pissed off, but I want you to know that once y'all have this conversation and you both decide you want to stay in this marriage, then you have to say, okay, love still lives here.
Right.
And
I
what
love
else
that.
can
Love
we be?
still lives here.
I love that.
I'm mad, but what else can I be?
Right.
Yes.
What
And
else can we be?
That places a
Yes.
responsibility. There is a responsibility in choosing. You're choosing to stay. Like you said,
Yes.
that is the goal, to stay. So, like, what is my role in allowing that to happen?
Yes.
And while also validating, yeah, girl, you got a right to feel pissed.
She do?
However,
Absolutely.
how do we make this as productive as possible while still validating? Like, this is a really fucked up experience.
Very fucked up experience. But this has been my go-to right now for treating infidelity, because the reality is you need emotional intelligence to navigate these conversations.
Absolutely.
You have to, because if not, you're just stuck in the same cycle.
Yeah.
And my job is to treat this, and we can't, not to keep you stuck here. We got
Right.
to treat it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, we got to have a task. So now I'm tasking, that's my whole thing now. We got task.
Yeah, I
I like that because that's also a lot of emotional intelligence, even whenever you said the active listening pieces, and they talk about that being one of the core pieces of
Yeah.
like developing emotional intelligence. So what are like tips, tricks, things that you guys do to try to encourage active listening in your clients,
Mine
or
has
that
been,
you do for yourself?
mine has been setting timers for each other. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm working with a lot of couples, so the active listening is listening to each other. So so I have a lady who likes to jump in and cut her partner off, and so for a certain amount of time, he stopped getting mad. He just started telling it up. That's something we did. We started. That was my assignment for him.
Did
Don't
you
get
tell
mad.
her privately?
She knew.
Okay.
Because she
still couldn't help
still
herself.
couldn't help herself. She knew about the assignment. We don't have no secret. She knew about the homework assignment. He tallied it up.
That's actually hilarious.
She tallied it up, but I mean, this may have not been a good intervention because it may be shame based. Now that I'm thinking about it, Lord.
But I mean, but it depends on the
accountability.
rapport.
It's the accountability because you're not saying you ain't shit for doing this.
No,
but
I'm not saying
awareness.
But I can see how it can be triggering.
Oh,
But
heightened awareness.
But you were comfortable in doing that because you're at rapport.
Yeah, but in this moment, I thought about But yes,
Awareness
okay.
is essential.
But yeah, so he started doing that, and so like at the end, like if she had like 10 in a week, like you got to go buy this man something.
Now she gotta go buy it.
Go buy him something because you keep
Now,
cutting
is
him
it
off.
helping?
She gonna be tired.
Or she don't mind buying. If she don't mind buying them something, she's saying I get to cut them off, and I just gotta buy them something.
She like to save her money.
Okay.
It worked out perfectly
Okay,
fine. I know her.
Okay, that's good. See, you did
There
the
you
right
go.
approach. See,
Yeah, but it worked though because she did it. It did not end. Like it never decreased to the point that it didn't exist anymore. It's subtle now.
yeah, okay,
That's
good.
just the
It's
realness
subtle.
of life
Exactly.
and healing and recovery. Is
Exactly.
that it's never going. Don't expect things to completely go away.
Exactly.
But that it helped her with her awareness though.
Good.
It helped her with her awareness, and then like the subtleness come from her regulation by not acting on the impulse to do it anyway.
Right.
So emotional intelligence really is at the root of all of the work we do
For sure.
with these clients.
Oh,
Whether you're
absolutely.
seeing couples, children's, families, individuals, it's at the root of all the work we do.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We talk a lot also about, and I'm sure everybody's seen it before, of like listening to hear and not listening to
Yes.
respond. I
Yeah.
think that's also a huge
I struggle with that
part
myself.
of. No, you don't say.
We love the awareness.
Now the action. What y'all say is what you do with it.
Go ahead, T.
So we talk about this, but again, we don't practice it. Like we
Yes.
know it, we say it, but what does this actually mean to listen, to actually hear, and not to respond? And so something that I used to do with my kiddos when I worked at Discovery was set a timer, and there would be like 4 people in the group, 4 people in each group. You set a timer. Each person takes 1 minute to talk and just tell a story. They get to, which is fun. So they get to tell a story about something in their life. And then when it ends, each person that was listening has to tell a different part of the story
Ooh,
back.
I like that.
And so you're listening to really hear the story. You can't think about both at the same time.
Yeah.
About you and your life and or what you want to say whenever you're trying to listen
Right.
and be mindful of their story.
I think the timers are a great
love timers.
tool for active listening. It's my favorite thing to do.
But what do you do?
I
Because
do
we
it
don't
in
always
therapy.
set timers. So what do you do to make sure that you're active? Like, well, we know Mercedes struggles, so maybe she's not doing this. But Britt, what about you? How do you practice active listening in your
She
life?
couldn't help herself.
Cool.
Takesha.
I think this goes back to what I said in the previous session. I used to have a staring problem as a kid, right? And maybe this is a little bit perfectionist in me. Like, I want to make sure I'm hearing you. That way, what I'm about to come back with is pinpointing either why what you said was conflicting or, okay, and here is my point of view. Like, I try to be as mindful as possible. It's not perfect, but I typically go in with the intent of understanding. I believe that's at the forefront. Now, I'm not going to go that way. But I try to lead with that as the forefront. It's not always perfect. And I'm not going for that. But I would say at the default, I do go in with understanding. And so that's sort of, have I been passionate before and have interrupted? Yes. But again, the intent is never to bombard a person with my point of view because I just know that's not realistic. I just always hope that the same understanding that I extend to people, that people give me the same type of understanding. And if it's not happening, I just gently remove myself because I know it is always my approach to understand. So shout out to me for being a staring kid and
There you
being
go.
There's nothing wrong with being a staring
because
kid.
I think I'm intuitive.
Well,
in a
there's
way.
nothing wrong with staring.
in.
Well, but
I
kids
used
are
to be
supposed to
like-
stare.
For me,
They're curious.
For me, anytime I'm usually having a conversation, and I interrupt, of course, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
I like to go into every conversation, every space, really under the guise of like every person has a new experience and perspective and idea, and this is the most important person in my life. Like at this time, like they're the most intriguing person because this is the only space and time that's guaranteed right now. So you're the most interesting person. So I'm gonna always take a curious approach. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to understand because I can't do anything else in this moment, and I am with nobody else in this moment. And so a lot of times I've talked to clients who have a hard time of like, well, I'm thinking about this other thing or this other person or what else I need to do. And for me, it's like, I guess just kind of practicing mindfulness or being present in the moment, there's literally nothing else I can do right now.
Right. And I think both of you all could agree, because we're therapists, our job is to be, we're constantly in an active listener or listening role. Where I've had to practice emotional awareness because I could naturally fall into a listening role in other settings, is not being afraid to shine even in larger settings, if that makes any sense. Because I could be quiet.
I don't see you struggling with that, but maybe I need to be around you more.
But I've gotten I mean, I'm comfortable with y'all, so I don't. And we often talk about things that I'm interested in. If I'm not interested, your girl is not going to participate.
Girl, I got a hard time with that too. Also, just the curious approach, because I ask a lot of questions because they're the most important person at that time.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that some people can perceive that as also like a lack of vulnerability on my part because I'm not volunteering information. But I'm always like, well, I ask a lot of questions. But then I also have to realize that everybody's not a therapist, so they might not ask the same amount of questions or the kind of questions.
A couple years ago, I went on a date with a guy. We had talked for a little while, but he actually gave me feedback that I never thought of. And I don't know how we ended up having the conversation about how the first date went, but he said, like, you asked me a lot of questions, but you didn't really mention anything about you. And I was like, oh, shit.
But I be like, ask questions.
It's called feedback loops. He's supposed to ask you questions about you.
He did, but then he realized, like, it was his questions fed off of me, if that makes any sense.
Yes, because never mind.
But I appreciated the feedback.
But you said his questions fed off of you.
Yeah.
Which means you was leading the conversation.
I mean, possibly.
There's a therapist who addressed this. This is an interesting take because a guy told a woman this, and her therapist had the best rebuttal to him.
What was
Get creative and learn how to ask questions.
Yes,
that's fair.
I encourage
Like,
that.
don't be like, your job was, he was supposed to take an active interest in you. He did not
And I
do
think
that.
that's what it is. Active interest or concern about the other person. Because I'm going to ask you all of the questions in the world.
Right.
Like, if you're not getting it out of me, it's because maybe I feel like you're not interested if you're not asking the same kind of questions.
That is a thing, though.
Yeah.
There are actually women who have said that guys have told them this.
I've had it happens.
It happens. So I'm like, I literally just seen a repost of this on Threads or something. I'm like, and I'm thinking like, maybe people should learn how to ask questions. And I'm not, and so that don't come easy or naturally to everybody. But you know, I always tell people, we got a computer right here.
Right.
And if you go out with somebody, you can easily Google first date questions or questions to ask people. It's so much to do just to show up. I think you should prepare for a first date. You shouldn't just show up and casually just be.
Right.
No, figure out how to talk and have a conversation.
Which, honestly, now that you said that, I think that also challenges the type of first dates that people are going on, right? Like, sometimes you have to be creative, and when you're doing some type of, like, activity, that sort of eases the tension or anxiety around it. Like, traditionally, people might go to the movies, which I think is the worst first date, or do dinner, and that could be a little awkward for people. I don't mind going. I'm an arcade girly. I don't mind going to the arcade.
It should be interactive so you can talk.
Interactive was the word. Yeah,
it should be interactive.
Or you should talk to each other and see what y'all's interests
that too,
or teach
are, and what y'all might like.
There are multiple ways to get through a first date or to have one, but we need to. But why they're not continuing is because people are not talking. Emotional intelligence at all time low, and I'm a firm believer in that.
Because it is.
It is. Yeah.
What do y'all think? What are, I guess, barriers that you notice for people having a hard time, like, gaining emotional intelligence?
I think for some people,
it's the emotions.
It's the emotions, but I think for some people, and then fortunately,
what about them? They don't recognize them. They don't validate them.
I think the people who have decided that this is just the way I am, they're not gonna learn anyway.
Exactly.
But I think it does boil down to the emotions. I've had clients tell me repeatedly, Dr. B, if I sit down in these emotions, I'm afraid what's going to happen on the other side.
And people also say repeatedly is, get out your feelings. I don't have no emotions. People say that repeatedly.
I'm so logical.
And which is...
Say it. Is what?
Being logic is also tapping into your emotions.
Exactly.
I think that the barrier to emotional intelligence, people having this, I want to say, like, weird relationship with the word emotions.
They do.
It's all over social media. We have a weird relationship with emotions. People don't want to acknowledge that this thing is a part of us and it exists. Everywhere somebody is saying, get out your feelings, get out your emotions, all these things. I see a lot of stupid stuff. We already had an episode on this, so I'm going to stop.
No, I think that's valid because that is a barrier. And that's why we're not connecting as people. That's why we lack empathy. That's why we lack integrity at this point. And yes, we're invited into people's lives via social media, but like nobody wants to understand. Everybody wants to trample over other people, and we want to compare traumas. Like,
or just be understood while not wanting to do the work of understanding.
I think that, and, never mind. I'm not gonna go there. Because like I think that this is also an issue as with us as a community, as Black people. If you think about emotional intelligence and you think about the pillars of emotional intelligence, which would be self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and relationships, so social skills or whatever. We have not tapped into the empathy, which is to appreciate another person's lived experience and perspective, because it's different from ours. It must not be real or true. That is what's wrong with our connection as Black people.
I agree.
yeah.
We are lacking empathy out here, and it is really it's a lot right now. I'm like it's so bad to me that I'm like, bro, we love each other, like, but we don't act like it. So like, how did we get here? We don't have no emotional intelligence, and then we don't want to talk about emotions,
Right.
Agreed.
or the lived experience,
Yeah. That's a.
but we do want to talk about why people ain't doing what they used to do. We gotta have
without the acknowledgement of the emotional toll. Child,
exactly.
Don't get me
That's what I'm saying
on.
though. We can't ask the conversations about like why women don't do what women used to do no more without acknowledging the emotional toll that it took on women to do what other women used to do.
In addition to that, this is why historical contexts are extremely important. And these conversations are way more nuanced than people are allowing it to be.
History matters. You got to know where you came from.
Exactly.
To understand the history, to know where we are.
Exactly.
I would also like to add that there are people sitting down, and I know that this is really popular right now, putting the microphone in your face, but places like the Breakfast Club, and I'm going to say this because they invite guests on, and said guests will say certain things, but I'm like, as the Black people in the room, when these non-Black people say things, I'm noticing that y'all don't got the intellect to have the conversation with these people. Like, there is such a low emotional IQ in these rooms having these conversations, and then it's just going on social media. I'm like, bro,
but
what was the intellectual in the room to have the conversation with this person? Because that person should have been challenged in so many ways. Like, we're just missing emotional intelligence.
I think we're missing that, or we're actively choosing for it to not be there, but like we're in a time where like going viral is the thing. So like they might have it and they're just choosing.
Correct.
Oh, it's about
people
to
don't
go
care
viral.
about historical correctness.
No.
Like,
Child, it be pissing me off.
Yes, because I know.
Because I'm like, why?
That's because you know better.
Because I'm like, why would y'all not challenge these conversations?
Girl, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Let's round back around to
Yes.
emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So we talked about a big part of that being emotional regulation. Mm-hmm. So what are the skills and tips or things that you do to regulate your own emotions, or how do you help clients work on regulating their emotions?
I will start with how I help clients.
Okay.
So I actually did a TikTok video on this recently. My best work has been when I utilize emotion.
Okay, best work.
I'm serious, girl. But I think my best work is when I use emotional focused therapy with my clients. And so in that approach, that certainly prioritizes emotional exploration and acceptance.
Okay.
So I'll tell my clients, I actually did an activity like this with my client recently who has an issue with sitting in her emotions. I was like, she told me a story that was a very hard story. And I challenged her, write down the emotions in this moment right now. Mm-hmm. Since you stated that this is a problem and you struggle to do this in the privacy of your home, what are the emotions right now? And she thanked me for that approach because she was like, yes, it was hard, but I feel so much better now that I've taken the time to say, like, these are the things that I feel. Mm-hmm. And even some of the things that she listed, like, I feel unlovable. I said, that is fair based off of that experience. Right. But here are so many people a part of your community that make you feel loved and make you feel cared for. So that's why I say emotion-focused therapy is one of my main approaches.
What is it called?
Emotion-focused therapy.
Okay.
EFT. And my clients will hear me say all the time, feel the feels. Let's feel it for a second. Let's name the thing. And I think their relationship with their self has gotten better. And I tell my clients all the time, like, the self-relationship is the priority. That way your other relationships can benefit from the love that you have for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I'm not confused, but I do want to talk about that because since we're talking about emotion focused therapy, because there's two, and we want to make sure we.
I think this might be like an LPC.
I've never heard of that one put that way, but emotionally focused therapy is a different.
That's to say, I just shortened it, but yes.
Okay, yeah. This was created by Dr. Sue Johnson. May she rest in peace. She just passed away. But that one is specifically rooted in attachment theory, that emotionally focused therapy. But the one you're describing, I'm gonna have to look that one up because that sounds emotional exploration. I've never heard of it put that way in terms of a model of therapy. Okay, I'm gonna look that one up.
Okay, so That's what you do, Britt. What about you, Sadies? Either for yourself or for your
For myself,
clients to
journaling.
practice
I've been
emotional regulation.
the Notes app. The Notes app.
You been journaling?
Well, I do. Mostly, I don't write. But I do put it in my notes.
Why
app.
you laugh?
Because I know people say that journaling is supposed to write, and I know that the pen and the paper, but this is just right here.
Because I know that
There's different ways to journal. I'll be telling my clients on a long commute.
People be criticizing
Audio.
folks for listening to audiobooks and using their Notes app, but let me tell you,
I mean,
my
it does
Notes
something
app.
different mindfulness-wise when you
But
write it
I'm
out,
able
that's
to
okay.
go back all the way to almost 10 years ago and see every note I ever put in this phone, and I'm thinking about like these are some. I've been saying some stuff. Somebody been
I done said
working my nerves, but no. I journal. And then I like to do nature walks. That's my thing.
Okay.
I love the nature walks. Living near a park, I've noticed it's going to be something that's going to be always needed for me. I need to be able to access a park and see some nature, hear some animal sounds, and some sunshine and all that.
Okay. And that helps with emotional regulation.
For me, it's like stress management, because I feel like emotion regulation is like having a preventative method to stress management.
I agree.
That's the way I look at it.
T?
For me, I use a lot of the active listening, mindfulness, and what was the one? I think I use a lot of like empathy building to help regulation in the moment. And so the empathy building goes along with also like just checking our facts. And so checking the facts and empathy is, this person, this person struggles with XYZ, this person hasn't done the work to heal in this area. How do you not internalize this? How do you make this not about you? The way that they're behaving, it says more about them than it does about you. So it's having empathy for that person without internalizing it. And therefore, if you're not making it about you, then you can be a little bit more regulated in that moment.
That's good. I would say that is good. Would you say empathy building? And somebody had posed a question in a TED Talk. Can you teach empathy?
Yes. And I think because we lack empathy with ourselves, I think that's why people struggle with providing that to other people. That goes into how this toxic way that we talk to people in the gym. Get your ass up and get on the, that's not empathy. That's actually shame building. That's toxic. Like, would you talk to your daughter that? Like,
but I've never been in a gym where that happens. But I guess I've seen it on social media.
Yes, I have seen that, and I'm like, this is not. That's wild.
Now that is how people are approaching the fitness scene, like with their videos, though.
Yes,
like you said, to go viral. Devin, the official Devin.
Wait, who that?
You follow him on Instagram. Yeah, he ain't gonna never see this. No, I said follow him.
Oh,
I like him.
Don't go find him.
No, I don't follow him on he on my fitness page, but that man is.
Nah, if he talking like that,
he talking reckless.
No, thank you. I'm good on that.
Okay. So we can't build empathy. I think we talk about how we do it all the time whenever we're like, try to understand where your parent is coming from or your partner or their lived experience. Anytime we're talking about stepping into another person's shoes or understanding or respecting their lived experience or respecting their autonomy to make decisions that you don't believe in or that you wouldn't want them to choose, all of that is building empathy.
Okay.
Right. And I think...
So people are choosing not to build empathy is what I'm hearing.
Sure. I don't even know. Do people even intentionally think about empathy or see it as something that's
important?
I don't think so.
I don't even, that's a word that has not made it to social media yet.
Well, we have an episode coming soon on it, so stay tuned for that.
Everything else makes it there, but empathy has not made it there.
I love empathy. Oh.
Me too. I want to say that I think... I don't want to necessarily say I think people take it a bit too far, but I think when we exercise empathy, that doesn't mean that you neglect yourself as a result of it, right? Like, I want to add that clarity because we oftentimes we're so understanding of other people's circumstances that, just because they went through X, Y, and Z doesn't mean they have any right to treat you like shit. That's not true, right? So, like, yes, you can still practice it, but also be mindful of what you do with it. Yes, I understand this person has gone through some trauma. However, that does not give them any access to be neglectful of me emotionally. You just have to know people and their limitations.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to always considering yourself in every situation.
Yes.
So having empathy does not mean like at the expense of yourself or your well-being ever.
Right. I think that's what I have seen. Mostly with my clients.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Any lasting takeaways or notes that you guys have for people wanting to grow in their emotional intelligence?
We kind of hit on mostly a lot of things like the self-awareness and the self-regulation, but you had a question on like the benefits of emotional intelligence. I think that's important to kind of talk about.
Okay.
Because
into it.
as it relates to like relationship building and maintaining those relationships, you need the social skills of being aware of your emotions and other people's emotions and how to operate that skill in different environments. Because I think that it may be needed more or less depending on what environment you're in.
Oh, 100%.
So I think that's important.
How has it showed up for y'all in different like how has having emotional intelligence benefited like a variety of different relationships for you?
Oh, for sure. Which is why I say consider the audience.
So like how? Because I know like at work I've had to have emotional intelligence to be like, okay, this woman don't get it, but also like I need a job, but also this is less about me and more about her, and so I'm not gonna go off even though I want to. I'm gonna just say, yeah, you know, I don't think it's okay that you talk to me
Right.
that way. I'm gonna go ahead and go over here.
Exactly. Precisely, in fact.
Versus other people that emotional intelligence might be, it actually might be a complete cutoff of this person doesn't know how to respect a boundary. They keep calling or they keep texting, and it does no good to engage because I can't be a good person here. I'll always be a bad person. So the emotional intelligence is knowing where they're at with it and where I'm at with it and just cutting ties.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that's knowing your limits and knowing what you can and can't control
Right.
and what you're gonna tolerate.
Yeah.
Yeah, consider your audience has been the best thing from Dr. B. But also, I think emotional intelligence for me, it benefits me because I get to have discernment because I can recognize other people's limitations. So I'm like, you know what? It ain't even got time.
Ain't even worth it.
Ain't even worth it.
Yep.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
All right.
Good topic, T.
Thank you.
Okay. Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.